Greetings all, this is Hairy Nick back on FFG's X-Wing 2nd edition subsite for what seems to have become twice weekly articles on the first lot of stuff we're seeing from 2nd edition. Basically, when Wave 1 drops, we're going to be seeing 3 different expansion packs from each faction, apart from of course all the goodies that come in the conversion kits. Including today's article, we have now seen articles on the X-Wing Saul's Renegades and the TIE Reaper, so we're still waiting on full spoiler articles for Lando's Millennium Falcon, the Fang Fighter, Slave One, the TIE Fighter, the TIE Advance, and the Y-Wing. So hopefully over the course of the next 3 weeks, we'll have all that revealed to us if this trend does indeed continue. For today, we have the full details on the TIE Reaper. Let's scroll down to the spread and see what we've got here. And before we take a look at anything else, let's have a look at the core stats of the ship. Here are the 2 dials side by side, this one on the left here being the original dial. The new dial seems to be a lot more colourful overall. If you have a look at Speed 1 for example, its 1 hard turns are red but its 1 banks are blue, where in the old dial they were just all white. At Speed 3 the new dial has 3 white banks while the old dial has 3 red banks. And those 2-speed bank maneuvers have now become white instead of the old green. And unlike the old version of this ship, there's no way to make all of your bank maneuvers less difficult. So I guess there's that built into it. We have to account for the fact that you can no longer choose not to take the Advanced Ailerons card. So the dial needs to reflect it in the most balanced way possible, I guess is the thinking here. Apart from that, Advanced Ailerons is now baked into the ship. In that now, before you reveal your dial, you must execute a 1 bank or straight if you are not stressed. And just like the TIE Striker, making sure that ability is baked in means you no longer have the choice not to take this, and from a design point of view, it's much easier to control what this ship can do from a maneuver point of view. And it is worth noting that in 1st edition, this was one of the major reasons FFG didn't give the TIE Striker bombs. I don't know if that's going to be the case with the TIE Reaper, but that is something to look out for. It may have the bomb slot added onto it. Although, given that this is the personnel carrier, I'm going to guess it won't. Apart from that, if we take a look at the other raw stats of the ship, the only difference is now the new TIE Reaper has the red coordinate action. Red actions, of course, not being a thing in 1st edition, so it was either going to give it the white coordinate action or not, and from going from nothing to white coordinate was probably a bit too much of a huge leap. There is now the Tactical Officer card that allows you to upgrade your red action to a white action. So by investing a few more points, you can incrementally make your actions slightly better, but there were simply no options like this in 1st edition, which is why it was just entirely left off, which makes a lot of sense in my eyes. Now, thankfully, everything on the spread here is actually revealed in the article, well, apart from the Scarif-based pilot, but we did see this card revealed in a previous article. Apart from that, we do have all of the named pilots here, so let's take a look at them and compare them to their 1st edition version. First up, let's take a look at Vizier. After you fully execute a Speed 1 maneuver using your Adaptive Ailerons ship ability, you may perform a coordinate action. If you do, skip your perform action step, which is nice and flexible. I like what this is doing a lot. The old version of Vizier allowed you to pass around your focus or evade tokens, which was cute, potentially has some nice brewing capability. But this new version of Vizier just seems to be about efficiency, making sure your coordinates work for you. It means you no longer have to receive stress if you use a coordinate, if you use this pilot ability to coordinate rather. At least that's what we assume here. It doesn't say it's a red coordinate action, and it doesn't specifically refer to the coordinate action on your action bar or anything like that. So I'm going to assume that there will be no stress if you use the coordinate action in this way. It also means that you get to use your coordinate action before or after you execute a maneuver, meaning that you can make sure that you're in range of your friendly ship. If using the coordinate action before you move means you're going to be in range in order to achieve a coordinate action, remember whenever you choose to coordinate you must elect a ship, and if you are not close enough you actually have to forfeit your action entirely. That's how coordinate works in 2nd edition, and this seems to give you just a little bit more insurance and gives you a little bit more reach. And I think purely in terms of a support role, this is fantastic. The old version of Vizier, again, yes, that was all about trying to make that combo work as best as possible, but this seems more about efficiency and seems less about the ship sort of doing all the work for you. The new version of Vizier doesn't seem like something that needs to carry an entire list. It's more about having a nice support role and potentially a carrier for some good support upgrade cards, which we'll talk about in a tick. But before we do, let's go through the rest of these pilots. First of all, Captain Ferof, while you defend, if the attacker does not have any green tokens, as in Focus, Evade or Reinforce, you may change one of your Focus or Blank results to a Evade result. Now, the old version actually allowed you to add an Evade result. Again, I have to repeat this. This is a thing that's just not going to be happening in X-Wing 2nd Edition, at least very sparingly. Adding Evade results is a very potent thing, and essentially allows you to draw the game out longer than it would otherwise do. I will say though that the old version of Captain Ferof requires the attacker to be jammed, and my thinking is that the new version is actually easier overall because your opponent not having green tokens would seem to be, in my eyes, a much easier thing to achieve. Jamming your opponent requires action on your part. Your opponent not having green tokens is something that, yes, it does empower your opponent to play around this, but at the same time, you are changing the behavior of your opponent, and that means that they might be taking suboptimal actions. Maybe this stops them from taking an important target lock or boost or barrel roll or something like that, and that's good in on itself. If you can change the behavior of your opponent, maybe make them play suboptimally, that's always a good thing. And again, this doesn't seem to have any crazy combo. This doesn't seem like it will be carrying a list anytime soon, but it's a nice ability. It means Captain Ferof is better at defending his cargo. Maybe you have important crew you need to take care of, and that just seems to work with what this ship wants to be trying to do. Rounding out these pilots is Major Vermeil. When you perform an attack, if the defender does not have any green tokens, you may change one of your eyeball or blank results to a hit result. Now, this is the slight upgrade on the old Major Vermeil, because the old Major Vermeil could not interact with reinforced tokens. Apart from that, it is an exact copy. And what's interesting about this is the only pilot that this ship has which works on offense. It's less of a support role thing, and that's good, I suppose. Having a bit of firepower with your support list, say this thing's flying alongside a swarm and you want to make sure you capitalize off all the red dice you possibly can, this might be the good option for that kind of scenario. It doesn't seem too broken or pushed. Again, your opponent can just fly around it. They can just take green tokens to make sure Major Vermeil cannot capitalize off his ability. But nevertheless, again, that's changing the behavior of opponent, and that seems pretty good. Also, at Initiative 4, this isn't going to be taking on any aces anytime soon, but it seems like a good high threshold for support ships nonetheless. And overall, I think what these pilots are trying to do, and they seem to be achieving this better than they did in First Edition, is what I just said, being the support ship. None of these pilot abilities, in my eyes, really seem to push the ship to the point where it's carrying any lists or doing most of the damage. This seems to be, in my eyes, an option that's going to be able to carry crew, and those crew options are going to be what pushes your list. That could be Palp, for example, although in my eyes, I think Palp's going to work best on a force-wielding ship. That's going to give his card text a bit more flexibility. In my eyes, what FFG seem to be doing with the Empire faction in 2nd Edition is offer the Empire different crew options to replace the ultimate support role that Palp played in First Edition. I'm particularly looking at cards like Admiral Sloane if you want to fly alongside swarms, Sienna Ree if you want to fly alongside aces. If you want a more aggressive version of the Reaper, we could have like an updated Doom Shuttle build with Darth Vader, like a Doom Reaper. Oh, that sounds good. The new Director Krennic seems like a strong option as well, with his added flexibility of offering the optimized prototype to any Imperial ship. Seems like it could be a good option here. I just get the impression that the TIE Ripper seems to offer better support role options than the Lambda Shuttle overall. Not that the Lambda Shuttle's terrible. I mean, the Lambda Shuttle, if it does continue to play the role it does, is going to be cheaper overall if you want to field the cheapest pilot that it has. Also, it has the ability to defend itself at the rear. And that, in my eyes, seems to mean that the Empire is going to have two pretty viable support options that either carries the old Palp build or even new builds that use different types of crew. I'll be curious to see how many crew options are available on the Reaper and the Lambda class shuttle for that matter. Maybe the Lambda will have 3 crew options moving forward. Maybe the Decimator will only have 2 crew and 1 gunner. We'll have to wait and see, because the amount of crew on each of these platforms is going to dictate how best they work and which one's going to be the best support ship. I think that's going to be a question moving forward for Imperial players. Now, also revealed in this article are 4 crew cards, a couple of them that we have seen before, and this is a tad confusing because there seems to be a bit of a mismatch with some of the art here. Tactical officer on the screen in front of us. On the left here we have the tactical officer that is revealed in this article. On the right is the tactical officer that we saw in previous articles, and I just think If I had to make a guess here, the tactical officer revealed in this article is mistakenly an older version that came along earlier in the design process. He specifically says treat the difficulty of your coordinate as white. And that, in my eyes, is a little bit more powerful and a little bit more confusing overall. Just giving you a white coordinate action is cleaner. It means if there's anything in the game that gets added in that gives you the option to execute a red coordinate at some point, there's a little bit of ambiguity as how this tactical officer works. Also, in the bottom left-hand corner, it says requires red coordinate. And this white box is specifically for requirements, so I don't know why it needs to say requires. Just an educated guess here, I think FFG may have accidentally put an older version of this card in this article. Just a heads up there. Also, another thing to note with these cards, instead of Imperial, they have the little Imperial crest on the card, which I have to admit looks quite good, but it doesn't seem to match up with any of the other things that we've seen so far. Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Because of the different wording on Tactical Officer, again, maybe these cards are older cards from the design process. I just get the impression that the FFG art department may have made a few mistakes with this article. Having said that, if these are newer versions of the card, if this is the design process moving forward, I really have to say, I do like having the faction crest on the card. I think that looks a bit cleaner than writing out the faction in the text box instead. Just a little aesthetic thing there that I like. We'll see what happens moving forward when we get some more revealed. But here's the ISB slicer. During the end phase, enemy ships at range 1 to 2 cannot remove jam tokens. A slightly less explosive version of the old ISB slicer that allows you to spread some more jam tokens out on your opponent's ships. Yeah, I just get the impression that they've powered this down a little bit. We don't want too many things that give out free tokens, and we don't want the control tactics being too powerful in 2nd edition. We want things to be more open and flexible, and I can see why they've gone for the design direction of this new version of ISB Slicer. We also have here revealed the new Death Troopers card, which again has changed a lot. During the activation phase, enemy ships at range 0 to 1 cannot remove stress tokens. And it's playing around with the stress mechanic just like the old one, but the old one was playing around with what your opponent's doing and playing around with their targeting priority. And I can see why FFG might want to shy away from this. Again, yes, Biggs Darklighter was a huge problem in 1st edition, so that ability might not be the kind of design direction they want to take the game in. I want to say this is very interesting because this kind of interacting with your opponent's ship at range 0 to 1 seems to be more of a rebel thing moving forward. This close proximity sort of ultra aggro style of cards doesn't seem to be fitting of most of the Empire stuff we're seeing, so I have to wait and see how this works with all the other Empire cards. I do like that design overall, I must say, because it encourages you to keep engaging. It encourages you, more importantly, not to disengage, which was a big problem in 1st edition, so I do like it from that point of view. And as a light control mechanic, yeah, this seems pretty good. There's going to be a lot more incidental stress in 2nd edition, so this seems like it will be relevant enough of the time that's worth taking. I will say though that the TIE Reaper seems to be overall a support ship that wants to carry more significant crew, which what I was talking about before. The Death Troopers doesn't seem like the kind of crew the TIE Reaper wants in my eyes, because it's just all basic support stuff. I guess on Vizier, with Death Troopers, you could think about just having another ship that's in the fray, kind of giving some light support to your friendly ships, whilst not having a too expensive build. I can see that being viable, but overall I think the Death Troopers more want to go on platforms that want to play more aggressively. Maybe there'll be a light Decimator build, say in 2nd edition, that wants Death Troopers. That just wants to dive in there, do as much damage as possible, and if you prevent your opponent's ship from removing stress tokens, it means it's harder for them to move away and maneuver around, say, your Decimator or whatever the Death Troopers have on them, which is pretty cool. Also, a little benefit of this card, it means if your opponent tries to dive on your ship, it means if they want to get into range 1 and they already have a stress token, it means that they can't take actions. It's only slight upside because it only works if your opponent's ship already had a stress token before they activated, but it is a bit of upside nonetheless. I could see that being useful in some scenarios, but in terms of core consistent builds that might appear in the meta, I really can't, in my eyes, place what the Death Troopers are trying to do. The old version of Death Troopers I felt like had a lot more clear design direction, and this new version, yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. Also, we have this new version of Director Krennic, and I just want to encourage you guys to click the annotation up here. I actually made a video on brewing with the older version of Director Krennic, and I made the comparison between this one and the first edition Director Krennic in that video. Essentially, the key changes that have happened here: he no longer provides his platform with free target locks, he only gives it the target lock action, which is fair enough. Free target locks are not a thing as much moving into second edition. He also grants the optimized prototype to any friendly ship now, not just your small base TIE platforms anymore. This could theoretically go on to, say, a Decimator if you really wanted to. It is worth noting that it also must be a different ship. Director Krennic cannot give optimized prototype to his own platform like he could in first edition. Also, the optimized prototype works very similarly. It no longer grants the ship an extra shield. This is because the platforms overall no longer need it. The old version was meant to sort of address the meta, deal with a lot of the issues that TIEs were having with bombs and auto damage in particular. And now the ability only works at the front primary arc, and you cannot spend any dice to activate it. You must spend one piece of paint. However, you do get the flexibility of not only being able to take away one of your opponent's shield, but you could flip one of their face down damage cards, which makes it more relevant more of the time. And considering this card can go onto any Imperial ship, this seems like a nice soft buff that is less about fixing specific platforms and more about just making Director Krennic a good consistent card overall in any type of build, which I really like. I think the old approach of trying to fix ships by proxy is a little bit fraught with danger, and making Director Krennic just a bit less powerful but a bit more applicable is probably the right design direction that FFG should be taking him, so big thumbs up to this. And yep, that's everything revealed in the article. Indeed, that would appear to be everything that we get in this pack. That was every pilot and upgrade that we saw on the spread, plus a couple of extras, so I don't think we'll be seeing anything new when this pack actually releases. But nevertheless, it's worth keeping an eye on just in case FFG do slip an extra upgrade into this pack. If this trend of FFG articles do continue, we can pretty much expect to see another one of these on Tuesday America time or Wednesday Australia time. In the meantime, guys, thank you so much for watching. Like and subscribe. Like me on Facebook, follow me on Twitter and Reddit, and I will catch you guys later.